Before you read another word, I want you to do something most people never do. Pause. Not to think, not to analyze, just to feel. In front of you are 5 containers: a drawer, a glass jar, a wooden chest, a steel safe, a worn leather suitcase. They are not simply objects. Each one is a mirror, quietly reflecting how you have learned to survive in an emotional world that often felt too loud, too unpredictable, or too unsafe to fully enter. The question is not which container looks most practical. The question is simpler and far more revealing. If you had to hide your emotions, which one would you choose? Don't explain your answer. Not yet. Just feel the pull. Carl Jung believed that the symbols we are drawn to are never random. Long before the conscious mind forms an opinion, the unconscious has already leaned toward shape, a texture, an energy that resonates with something deep and unspoken inside us. Your attraction to one of these containers is not a preference. It is a signal, a quiet message from the part of you that knows your emotional history better than any conversation ever could. Emotions are the most human thing about us, and yet they are also the most hidden. From childhood, we learn where feelings are welcome and where they are not. We learn whether tears are safe or dangerous, whether anger is acceptable or shameful, whether love should be offered freely or rationed carefully. These early lessons don't disappear. They simply become invisible. They shape the containers we build around our inner world, walls we stop noticing because we have lived inside them for so long. This test is not about judging how you manage your feelings. There is no wrong container here. Each one tells a story of a particular kind of intelligence, a particular way of protecting something precious and vulnerable inside you. What matters is not the container you chose. What matters is what it reveals about the emotional architecture you have built, and whether that structure is still serving you or quietly limiting you. Take one more breath. Let your eyes rest on the 5 containers without forcing a decision. Notice which one creates a subtle resonance inside you, a sense of familiarity, perhaps even a flicker of recognition, as if some quiet part of you is saying, yes, that is mine. Hold that choice, because what comes next may show you something about yourself you have been carrying for years without fully seeing. The drawer. If you were drawn to the drawer, the plain, practical wooden box with its simple handle and clean lines, your emotional world is shaped by an extraordinary ability to organize. You do not ignore your feelings. That is a misunderstanding many people have about you. You contain them. You sort them. You place them carefully into mental compartments and close the drawer quietly, returning to the surface world with remarkable composure. From the outside, you appear steady, capable, and emotionally reliable. And in many ways, you are. This is a deeply intelligent psychological strategy. Jung recognized that the human psyche cannot process every emotion simultaneously. Compartmentalization, when used consciously, is not repression. It is a form of emotional regulation, a way of managing the overwhelm that would otherwise swallow you whole. If you grew up in an environment where feelings needed to be handled quickly, where there was little room for emotional processing, or where vulnerability felt unsafe, you learned early that containing and organizing your inner world was the most efficient path to survival. There is genuine strength in this. You rarely fall apart in moments of crisis. Others come to you when the ground shakes beneath them, because your ability to stay functional in emotional storms is something many people quietly admire. You can hold the pieces together when everything is fragmenting. This is not a small gift, but the drawer has a shadow. Emotions placed inside drawers do not resolve themselves. They wait, and the longer they wait, the more weight they accumulate. You may have noticed this in your own life, a moment of unexpected sadness that seems disproportionate to the situation, an irritability that rises without obvious cause, a heaviness that appears after long stretches of productivity, as if the drawers have grown too full to close properly anymore. The act of compartmentalization that once protected you can, over time, create a subtle disconnection from your own inner life. You may find it difficult to access certain emotions when you actually need them, in moments of intimacy, in moments of grief, in moments when someone you love needs you to be present not as a manager of feeling, but as a human being who feels alongside them. Jung called this kind of protective mechanism a persona, the face we construct to navigate the external world. The drawer is your emotional persona, efficient, reliable, controlled, but beneath it lives a full range of your humanity, feelings that have been waiting patiently for a safe moment to be acknowledged. Your healing does not require you to abandon the drawer. Structure and order are part of your natural intelligence. But growth asks you one quiet question. Have you been checking in on what you have stored? Have you opened the drawers gently, one at a time, and sat with what you place inside? You do not need to empty everything at once. That is not how emotional healing works for someone with your nature. You need small, intentional moments of access. A few minutes to acknowledge something you set aside. A trusted person with whom one drawer can be opened slowly. A practice of noticing rather than immediately containing. The drawer was never meant to be a permanent storage facility. It was meant to be a temporary, holding space. What you place inside deserves to be revisited, not because it will overwhelm you, but because you are more capable of being with your feelings than you have been told. The glass jar. If the glass jar drew your attention, that clear, transparent vessel with its wide opening and honest simplicity, your relationship with emotion is more visible than most. You feel openly. People around you often know where they stand with you. Your joy is genuine. Your frustration is readable. Your care is apparent in the way your face shifts, the way your voice changes, the way your body language speaks even when your words do not. There is an authenticity to how you move through emotional experience that others find both refreshing and, at times, quietly disarming. But notice the jar more carefully. It is transparent, yes, but it has walls. Clear walls. Walls that allow the world to see what is inside, while still maintaining a distinct boundary between inside and outside. This is the paradox of your emotional style. You appear open, and in many ways you are, but there's a layer of protection most people miss, a glass boundary that says, you can see me, but you cannot simply reach in and take from me. Jung would recognize this as a sophisticated form of emotional self-preservation. You have discovered that true visibility is not the same as vulnerability. You can be seen without being consumed. You can feel without losing yourself. This is a rare psychological skill, and it speaks to a deep intuitive understanding of where your emotional edges are. Those who choose the glass jar often grew up in environments where feelings were acknowledged, but where there was also a subtle message. Be real, but be careful. You learn that emotions could be shared, but that sharing them without protection sometimes led to unwanted consequences. Someone used your openness against you. Someone dismissed what you expressed. Someone responded to your realness with judgment. So you kept your feelings visible while building the invisible glass between your inner world and the unpredictable responses of others. The strength of this is profound. You rarely appear cold or withholding. You maintain connections more easily than those who hide completely. Your emotional honesty creates trust. People feel that they know you, and often they do to the degree you have chosen to allow. The shadow, however, is this. Glass is clear, but also fragile. And the jar, by design, can only hold so much before it needs to be emptied or it overflows. You may have experienced this, moments when your careful boundary between expressed and protected suddenly cracks. When something cuts through the glass and reaches the unprotected interior, these moments can feel disproportionately devastating. Not because you are weak, but because the glass you count on has been quietly bearing more pressure than you realized. There is also the risk of performing openness rather than living it. When the glass becomes not just a boundary but a display, when you share what feels safe to share and keep the rest behind a more opaque interior wall, you may begin to lose touch with which emotions are actually yours and which ones you have learned it is acceptable to express. Your healing lives in the question of whether you are truly open or strategically open. Both can look identical from the outside, only you know the difference. And slowly learning to trust a few people with what lives behind the glass, not just what is visible through it, is where your next chapter begins. The wooden chest. If you were drawn to the wooden chest, old, heavy, sealed with a latch, carrying the scent of history and secrets, your emotional world holds a particular kind of tenderness that has learned through experience to protect itself behind locked wood. You have felt deeply, perhaps more deeply than most people around you ever realized. And at some point, probably more than once, that depth of feeling was met not with care, but with carelessness. Someone was given access to what you carried, and they did not treat it gently. Perhaps they used it against you. Perhaps they simply did not understand it. Perhaps they left and took the feeling of safety with them. So the chest was latched, not out of coldness, not out of a desire to be distant or unavailable, but because the interior of that chest holds something precious, something that was once open to the world and paid a price for it. You learned, in the way that all deep wounds teach, that what you feel is not always safe to show, that the most tender parts of the self require protection, not from everyone, but from the careless, the indifferent, and the ones who reach in without understanding the weight of what they are touching. Jung spoke of psychic wounds as some of the most formative forces in the development of the self. The wooden chest is a monument to your wounds, not a weakness, but a testimony to the fact that you were once open, and that the closing happened in response to real experience, not imagined fear. There's enormous strength in having survived what closed you. The person who chooses a wooden chest is rarely someone who has lived on the surface. You have known loss. You have known the particular ache of feeling unseen in your own depth. You have navigated emotional experiences that many people around you would not know how to hold, and you carried them, often alone, often in silence, often with a composure that gave no indication of what you were working through inside. But here is what the chest wants you to know. What you locked away for safekeeping has been waiting, not impatiently, not urgently, but with a kind of gentle persistence. The emotions stored in the chest have not rotted or diminished with time. They have simply remained, preserved in the dark, intact, honest, and real, and they are asking, not demanding, for the occasional turning of the latch. Healing for you does not come from throwing the chest open to the world. It comes from slowly, carefully, on your own terms, beginning to trust again, not all at once, not with everyone, but with the right person in the right moment, in the right degree of safety, allowing one small corner of the lid to lift. The wooden chest suggests you carry ancestral weight, too, patterns of emotional concealment that may have been passed through your family for generations, learning that feelings were private matters, that stoicism was dignity, that the interior life was sacred but also secret. These patterns serve those who came before you, but your evolution asks you to examine which parts of the inheritance still fit. You are not the lock. You are the person who holds the key, and you are allowed to decide at your own pace who deserves to see what is inside. The safe. If your eyes move immediately to the steel safe, heavy, impenetrable, sealed with a combination only you know, then your relationship with emotion is governed by one of the most powerful human instincts of all, the need for control. This is not a criticism. It is a recognition of how seriously you take the stakes of emotional exposure. To choose the safe is to say, at some level, that your feelings are not simply private. They are classified. Access is not denied out of indifference. Access is denied because you understand, with a kind of bone-deep certainty, how dangerous the wrong person in the wrong moment with the wrong intention can be with what you hold inside. You have likely been through something or many things that taught you this lesson in the most direct possible way, a betrayal that cut not just emotionally, but in a way that felt structural, a moment of total vulnerability that was met with the kind of response that makes a person quietly resolve never again, a relationship where you opened completely and found that openness weaponized against you. The safe did not appear from nowhere. It was built deliberately, each wall reinforced by specific experience. The strength of the safe is formidable. You are not easily manipulated. You are not easily broken. You can navigate emotionally volatile situations with steadiness that comes not from the absence of feeling, but from a deeply trained capacity to regulate what you allow to surface. People may perceive you as emotionally strong, and you are, but in a way that carries a cost most of them never see. The cost is this. When everything is sealed behind a combination lock, you begin to lose fluency in your own emotional language. The feelings that were placed inside the safe for protection begin to feel like they belong in there permanently. The original reason for containment, specific people, specific betrayals, specific dangers, gradually becomes generalized. The safe that was built for particular threats begins to seal out connection itself. Jung called this the shadow integration problem. When we protect ourselves so completely from outer vulnerability, we also seal off inner access. We lose the ability to feel our own emotional life with the richness it deserves. We stop knowing ourselves in the full way, because knowing ourselves means feeling ourselves, and feeling is what the safe was built to prevent. There is something else inside the safe that is worth naming, a quiet longing, the longing to be known, truly known, not in a way that requires you to remove all the locks and expose every corner, but in a way that another human being somehow sees you, sees the weight of the safe itself, and does not flinch, does not try to crack it open, but simply sits beside it with respect. Your healing is not about dismantling the safe. It is about gradually learning that vulnerability, offered selectively, in safety, to those who have genuinely earned it, is not the thing that broke you. The thing that broke you was offering it to the wrong people. The safe was not the wrong response. But at some point, learning to distinguish between those who deserve the combination and those who do not becomes a work, because sealed completely, the safe is not just protection. It is solitary confinement. The suitcase, if the worn leather suitcase was the one that called to you, with its buckles and its handles and its sense of always being somewhere between departure and arrival, then your emotional world is shaped by a particular and quietly exhausting kind of readiness. You carry your feelings with you, all of them, everywhere. You do not leave them at home before entering a difficult room. You do not put them in storage during busy seasons of life. They travel with you, packed and repacked, sometimes neatly organized and sometimes spilling over the edges, but always present, always within reach, always yours to manage every single day. There is something profoundly real about this choice. The suitcase person does not pretend. You are not in denial about the weight you carry. You know it is there. You feel it when you walk. You feel it when you sit still. You feel it particularly in the quiet moments when there is nothing external to distract you, and the suitcase simply sits in the corner of the room, waiting to be unpacked. Jung would recognize in this choice the psychological pattern of someone who has a deep relationship with their own inner life, sometimes too deep, in the sense that the emotions have become constant traveling companions rather than experiences that can be moved through and released. You are always on the verge of processing, always almost ready to open everything up and work through it properly. But there is always another departure, another destination, another demand on your energy before the unpacking can really begin. This pattern often develops in people who were early in life, the emotional caretakers of others, who learned to keep their own feelings mobile and manageable because the priority was always someone else's emotional needs, who became skilled at carrying rather than arriving, because arriving meant stopping, and stopping meant finally confronting the full weight of everything packed inside. The suitcase also speaks of resilience. You are adaptable. You have learned to function, even thrive, under the weight of significant emotional cargo. You are not fragile. You are not someone who collapses easily. You move. You manage. You adjust. You arrive in new situations, new relationships, and new challenges still upright, still capable, still present for others. But even the strongest traveler eventually needs to put the suitcase down, not to abandon what is inside it, not to leave your emotional history by the side of the road, but to actually rest, to open the latches without the pressure of an imminent departure, to sort through what you've been carrying and recognize which items still belong in the bag and which ones you've been carrying out of habit, long past the time when they served you. Your healing is permission. Permission to stop moving long enough to arrive, not at a destination outside yourself, but inside. Permission to acknowledge that carrying everything at once is not strength. It is survival. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve the spaciousness of actually putting the suitcase down, sitting beside it, and slowly, without urgency, without an onward journey already scheduled, beginning to unpack. Now that each container has been opened and examined, one final truth deserves to be held. You are not permanently defined by the container you chose. The drawer, the jar, the chest, the safe, the suitcase. Each one represents not a fixed identity, but a current emotional posture, a particular way of relating to your inner world that has made sense given the life you have lived. These containers were built by you, for reasons that were real in response to experiences that genuinely shaped you. But psychological growth, what Jung called individuation, is the process of becoming increasingly conscious of the structures we have built around ourselves, not to destroy them, not to pretend they were wrong, but to see them clearly, to understand which walls were built for protection and which ones have grown into prisons, to ask, Gently and without judgment. Is this still serving me, or am I simply maintaining out a habit? Every container has both a gift and a shadow. The gift is the protection offered. The shadow is what it costs when protection becomes permanent. Healing is not found in dismantling everything you have built. It is found in developing a conscious, compassionate relationship with your own emotional architecture. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to protect yourself. And you are allowed, at your own pace, in your own way, with the people who have earned it, to slowly open what has been sealed. The container you chose today is not your limitation. It is your starting point. And the fact that you chose it all means some part of you is already ready to look inside.